the wooden horse. The happiest day in the history of Troy was when the Greek army sailed away. For 10 long years the war had raged, and many of the famous and bravest warriors on both sides had fallen in battle. How the Trojans rejoiced as they walked along the shore where the Greek enemy had camped. Here, cruel Achilles had set up his tent. There, the arrogant king Agamemnon had commanded his men. Now, for the first time in their lives, the children of Troy could run and play in the foam of the sea, and teenage boys and girls could walk hand in hand beneath the cliffs. Little did they realize that the enemy army had not set sail for faraway Greece. Instead, they had only taken their ships to the other side of the island, called Tenedos, and there they were looking out of sight, but still not far away. It was all a cunning trick up by the wildest of the Greeks, the red-haired Odysseus, who was never short of a plan. The Trojans saw that the Greeks had left behind a strange bearing. It was a giant wooden horse with ribs made from the banks of fir trees. The people marveled at the massive statue, but there were different opinions about what they should do with it. Some wise old men saw there was something not quite right about the horse, and advised that they should set fire to destroy it away. Others warned that the gods would be angry with them if they did not honor it instead. After all, the wooden horse was dedicated to the great-eyed Athena, the great goddess of wisdom, and nobody wanted to feel her wrath. The crew was weeping, and while the breathed old bride spoke out above the murmur, "Citizens, whatever this strange horse may be, remember this: it is always wise to fear the Greeks, especially when they are bringing gifts by the great god Poseidon, lord of the sea, and everything that is sacred. Let us not fall into this deadly trap, for that is what it surely is." So saying, the old priest hurled of the spear at the horse, and it flew into the beast's side and quivered, and the guts of the horse riveted with an early hollow sound like a long deep moan. Had the Trojans decided there and then to set fire to the horse of death, their lovely city would be standing to these days, and the descendants of King Priam would be living in peace and happy. Just then a Trojan patrol came upon the scene, and they brought with them a prisoner, a Greek called Sinon, whom the army had left behind. "Now we will find out the truth," said the Trojan guard. "Let's poke this wretched Greek spy with our bronze spears until he tells us what this Greek gift is all about." When he heard this, the poor prisoner cried out, "No, please, don't harm me. I'll happily tell you all you want to know, for the cruel scheming Odysseus is no more friend of mine than he is of you." And so the Trojans questioned him, to what Simon had to say, and then tried to fathom whether or not he spoke the truth. Do you not think that the Greeks would have already given up this war before 10 long years had passed? Let me tell you that many times they planned to leave their sufferings behind, as they have done now, but each time they prepared to sail away on their breaking back ships. The sea god Poseidon sent a terrible storm and whipped up giant waves on the wind sea. They consulted a priest who told them the reason why the gods were inflicting such pain. You see, before he left his home in Argos, King Agamemnon, the great leader of men, waited an 8 months for a wind to blow his ships to Troy. Eventually, he decided that the gods required a very special offering, and as usual, it was scheming Odysseus who thought up the plan. He sent for Agamemnon's own daughter, his darling Euphemia, and told her that she was to marry swift-footed Achilles. She came with great joy and gladness in her heart, for Achilles was the handsome and bravest of the Greeks, but it all was a most dreadful trick. Instead of marrying Achilles at the altar of the cliffs high up above the sea, the brides sacrificed the lovely white-skinned young men to the sea god. Straightway, as the full death was done, the winds began to blow. Now, 10 long years later, as we waiting for the wind to take us back home, Odysseus came up with another plan. "I know," he said. "Let's sacrifice the most useless of those among us. Nobody will miss Simon. He has only ever criticized our plans and called us leaders wicked and foolish. We won't sacrifice an innocent young girl. Now, let's give the gods the life of a man, and you'll see they will send us a fair wind to blow us swiftly home." But before Odysseus said his word to fetch me to death, a rumor reached me of what he had said, and I ran into the woods and hid. So the Greeks came up with a second plan to appease the god, and you see the results before you. This magnificent wooden horse is their offering, so saying how sorry they are for the needless death and destruction they have caused. Only bring it inside your walls before night falls, because unless I am far wrong, there will be gold and treasures hidden deep inside the belly of that wooden horse. When the Trojans had heard Simon's tale, many of them were ready protesters, and they believed his wicked lies, for he spoke most convincingly, but still the crowd was uncertain what to do, until that is, a most terrible thing happened. The old priest who had thrown his spear at the horse was standing by the sea, when a great monster came swimming into shore and carried him up its jaws. It had happened in a flash, and the Trojans were filled with a strange terror. Sinon one again called out, "You see, Trojans, nothing but the truth I spoke. The gods have really punished that wicked old priest for sending his spirit into the wooden horse, and now nobody dared to disagree. The Trojans brought ropes and placed wheels beneath the stag's feet, so that they might pull the wooden horse through the gates of the magnificent city. As the ill-omened procession entered Troy, girls and boys dancing around the horse, singing holy chants. There was rejoicing in the city, and even the beauty teller, Cassandra, did not dare open her lips though she foresaw the immediate doom. For the gods had given Cassandra the gift of clear sight, prophecy, but had decreed that no one person would believe in her. It was clear, moonlit night, and the Trojans carried on parting. Sign on the grid had been set free, and nobody noticed that. He lit a fire on the beach to signal to the army on the island of Tenedos that the wooden horse was waiting in the walls of Troy. Next he returned to the city and opened a secret door in the belly of the horse, and a great band of warriors who had been hiding all the time waiting let down on the long rope, and they were led to the ground by wily Odysseus, who was the first of them to stand in the central square of magnificent Troy. It was not long before the Greek intruders had surprised the warriors on the main gates and killed them. Soon the wide doors were opened and the Greek army was soaring into Troy. The Trojans were either drunk or sleeping, and in no way ready to fight, and on every side the city was in turmoil. Soon the place of the king Priam was in the grip of fire, and Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, for whom these 10 years of war had been fought, was throwing herself at feet of her Greek husband, King Manilius, had protesting how she had been kidnapped and brought to Troy against her will. It was all lies, of course, but Menelaus was ready to believe his lovely wife, and took her once more in his arms.